I went overseas for a few years and worked in a community center in Brazil. And that kind of reinforced even more, like, I want to learn more about how trauma impacts people. Even just my own parents' story, I know how it can impact you. And so, I came back from Brazil and went to UT for graduate school.
Okay.
And
Knoxville?
Yes, but they have a campus here. So it's like my degree is UT Knoxville, but it's
okay. Gotcha.
over off Festival's Lane.
I went to UT, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool.
I'm a very neutral UT supporter.
Yeah, same.
I'm happy to hear that they've done well, but
yeah, exactly.
I almost never know they're playing.
Right. I get it.
So yeah, I did a master's in social work in that program, which puts you on the clinical track to how, and then I worked in the schools and foster care and a couple places.
Okay.
It's been a long,
it sounds,
it's been a long journey. Yeah.
So how was that with, you know, I guess like going into that role, like, because 2019 is when you started your practice, right? So so how was that journey? Because like, you know, for example, like I train clients, right? So I'm a personal trainer, but like I've always, you know, talked about Dandy Fitness as more of a brand, right?
Sure.
And like the mission, you know, and what I'm here to do. And so it's one of those things where like, you know, a lot of times I've had this talk with other trainers and they're like, you can't, like, you have to have boundaries and whatever. And when I was younger, I was like, nah, like, I'm good. Like, just like, tell me everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I got you, whatever. And then the stuff started getting heavier. And then it was like, I'm not equipped for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it would get so intense. Right. And there was even things at the resort that I worked at in Vermont that would happen. And they were like, I'm so sorry that you dealt with this. And I was just like, I mean, who else was gonna?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I like lived on the property. So like I saw more stuff, you know what I mean? Whether that was like anywhere from, binging, purging, suicidal things, like all that. And so it just so happened, like I was always the person that like was
That's
there to
heavy
like,
stuff.
yeah. And and at that point I was like 22, 23, you know what I mean? Like maybe younger, maybe 21. I don't know, but it was just like really heavy, right? But I knew I always wanted to help people, you know? And so now it's been one of those things with my journey and stuff too. It's like that with my clients, even it's like, I'm here as a support. I am like, you know, you're like number one, like I got you, but also like we need like a therapist.
Yeah.
Like also we need like more support from your partner. Like also we need like, there's other buckets, right? Like to make the whole piece work, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so it's always so intriguing, like the mental side of it, like how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like
That's a good question.
yeah.
I'm really glad to hear you've developed some boundaries.
Yes. Oh yeah. and that's been it had to happen. Like
Yeah, you
we
have to
talked
learn
about that all the time. Like and sometimes it's I like to say that God kind of loves to just like I imagine me going down the road and like a wind gust just like goes like boom and like throws me off that path.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like where the Bible verse comes from up there. Like then why I put that up there. But it's, you know, because of I usually have to be like slapped in the face kind of to change direction. And it is with the whole boundaries thing, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like learning that like, oh, like I gotta wind it back, or we gotta put something parameters, and those parameters have only helped me. And I think that some people are so afraid to like even like put up a boundary because of the repercussions and whatever. But it's like once you do, you start allowing for so much growth in yourself and so much more, even compassion and time. You know?
Yeah, I talk about boundaries a lot. I think there's a lot of confusion around what boundaries are, how to set them, where they're needed, but particularly with the clients I work with in helping professions, kind of like what you're saying, like they're naturally nice people. They don't become nice once they're a NICU nurse. They already were.
Yes, exactly.
Had a lot of capacity to care and wanted to take care of people, and then got in this field where everybody needed them all the time, and it's hard to learn to switch that off. And this is kind of a wonky metaphor, but I describe boundaries as like the crate you get for a new puppy. You can explain all day long to the puppy that like, this is a nice couch, so don't chew on it.
Right.
But when you leave, that's probably what he's going to do because he's a puppy. And then, so the crate makes it to where you can come home and enjoy his puppiness.
Yes.
Because your stuff is still intact, right?
Right.
And after 8 months, if you're like, he's learned his lesson, he's been in a crate every day, I'm going to take it away, he's going to go back to being a puppy.
Yeah.
So the weird thing about that metaphor is like, I'm not saying people are puppies, but the crate is the boundary. That's what allows you to to enjoy that relationship
100%
as the person is. And so the boundary helps you enjoy them.
Yeah.
It's not trying to make you change people, right?
100%. No,
and just
I love
understanding
that.
like, I can't
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing that I was getting to about the trainers. It's like that I've heard other female trainers are like, they take on so much and whatever. And I'm like, but do you see the male trainers taking on that? Do you know what I mean?
That's a whole different episode.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things of like, I've always tried to be, again, I'm more compassionate, I'm more empathetic, all the things, right? But it is one of those of like, there's certain things that wouldn't fly when you would have a male trainer. And so again, it's again, trying to just be mindful of that. Like again, texting, in the middle of the night is not appreciated. Like text. And again, we've all lived it. We've all done it. And there's times where I know that I was so focused with bodybuilding, like that I didn't even know what day it was, let alone when I was sending emails at 3:00 in the morning.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I get it that things can be so manic and so hectic and whatever. But on some level, it was just like once it's been said, you know what I mean? When someone's like, hey, by the way, like I actually don't work on this day or whatever. Or like I have a scheduling software now, which has alleviated a lot of stress.
Sure.
Which is awesome. I have an assistant who clients, should be reaching out to when they need to reschedule their sessions or change times or whatever.
Yeah.
So like those type of things have like really helped,
Yeah.
But also, I feel like so many times, even just as women, but like we take on everyone else's stuff. And it's just like, I don't know. I never really felt that growing up. Like I kind of just like didn't really have that, I guess. But I cared for people, but I didn't like feel their stuff attached to me.
Sure.
And as I got older, I started feeling it like attached to where I kind of felt like I had to like cleanse.
Yeah,
that's
interesting.
Do you ever like have that?
No.
Yeah. Tell me your life.
I think part of the boundary thing with me is part like just personality. And I grew up moving around a lot. And I grew up, I think just kind of the dynamics of my family life. We were so involved like in our church and in the nitty gritty of other people's lives, just by the nature of what my parents' roles were. But then, we like go visit someone in the hospital and then kind of go about our day. Like we it's just kind of the nature of also like my dad's role. He would have to do a hard thing. And then now we're going to your brother's baseball game. Yeah. And I think I just kind of learned like, it's okay to kind of feel very deeply
in that
sad in this moment. And then here's the next thing. Yes. So I think some of that for me just kind of happened naturally. And I did have to learn about boundaries, particularly the job when I was brand new.
Yeah.
21 years old. I'm in these teenage girls' homes.
Right.
I have a paycheck for the first time in my life and certainly was not rolling in it, but was better off than a lot of the clients that I was in their homes. And so I struggled not to want to fix things for them or help them outside of what my scope is. And I had to learn a lot about separating my own, keeping our relationship professional, which is definitely hard to do when you're younger. And kind of like training, you're getting to know people. It's not like a doctor's office. Oh, you're seeing people sweat and, you're up close and personal and they're sharing about their marriage or whatever. Yeah. And so
it's very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable situation.
Exactly. So one thing that's helped me that could maybe help people who are listening if they're in similar fields is that I have learned to make the boundary like on my end, like speaking to scheduling and things like that.
Yes.
I tell my clients on the front end, hey, listen, you can reach out to me whenever it occurs to you, but I don't check. My client contact is through an app. So it comes to my phone, but I don't get a notification for it.
Right.
So the boundary is that they need to understand, don't expect a response from me until working hours. So feel free if you get a wild hair at 3 a.m. and want to tell me something, just know I'm not going to be responding to you. If you need a response from me, just know you're not going to get that in the middle of the night. I'm not a crisis. That's not if you need a crisis response, I'm not the right fit for you.
Right.
And also, I tell clients right now, you are getting my full attention. I'm with you right now. So if somebody else is emailing me, they're waiting. And so just kind of understand that my life is like that. And so that really kind of releases the pressure of trying to train them. It's like, you do you, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you what you can expect from me. If you don't show up, I'm going to charge you. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that on the front.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's not a sticky conversation every time.
Yes, 100%.
Show.
And that's the thing too, is that's where like I had to realize when I don't know, a couple of years back where I just kind of sat with myself and was like, okay, when I'm having these consults, like I want to sit and actually like tell them, here's like laid out everything, because sometimes I would be like, like to save them money, I would like skip a consult and like let them, just kind of let them like sign up and whatever. But then I was like, no, because then they've missed so many things. And I was like, I have to put that hard down. And if you're not even willing to pay the consult fee, then we're not going to be a good fit together anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's only going to benefit both of us.
Yeah.
Because I need to know about your life. I want to know more. You're not just another, like cookie cutter plan.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I had to be like, no, like this is the process.
Yeah.
We do the consult, then we do this, it's a whole method. Like it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And same with how I train, and so there's a process to all of it, and having people respect that is, you find out who's your people and then who's not.
And there's a lot of services out there.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of, concierge, a la carte services. If you, especially when we're talking about mental health, there are a million therapists in this town. So I am not shy about I want to help you. And also if I'm not the right fit for you, that is okay.
Well, and what's nice too is this is something that I think a lot of people get scared of. And you tell me if you've witnessed this, but when people have told me that they've gone to a therapist, like they tried somebody and then they were awful or didn't work, and then they just never go back to finding ones. And I tell my girls, I'm like, you got to fight for it. You got to fight for what you want in every respect of every way. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things when so I had gone through a loss, and leading up to that, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of traumatic, and it was just, just a bad situation. And whenever that ended, as it was starting to end, I knew that it was coming. I was like, I'm going to have somebody. You know what I mean? Because it's not appropriate for me to talk to my clients about this. And then then my mom, it's just, it's going to be too much. And even with my friendships, because you're going through COVID and you're trying to talk about stuff, but I'm like, man, this is some heavy stuff, and I never had a therapist before, never really felt like I needed one, right?
Sure,
that whole thing. And because the way I look at it was the stuff that happened to me, even growing up and whatever, I could handle and had kind of moved past and worked through, right? But when it was someone else's stuff, that's when I was like, I need help.
You didn't know what to do with that.
Right. I can handle my thing. I know what I got to do. I know my life, my business, my whatever.
Yeah.
But when it was someone else's stuff on top of that, I'm just pushed down, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually had reached out. And so I went to a male therapist, went into his office, wherever. I was like, yeah, this is not going to work out. And didn't like that. And then I went to this, or I had a female virtually, and she was just and I'm glad she said it now, but at the time it really wrecked me. But she said something she was like, your stuff, the way she put it, it was your stuff is, I don't know, your stuff is too much for me to handle. You're going to need someone else. Okay. And it was okay. But again, someone that's brand new to that may have been okay, well, why bother? Do you know what I mean? It felt very defeating.
Sure.
And so I was
also makes it sound like you're the problem.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Right. And I was just kind of okay, cool. Got it. So I just moved on. And then finally I reached out to another service, and they were like, hey, actually, the sweet man, and I don't even remember who it was through, but he was just so nice. But he was like, look, we actually have a therapist who she's actually going to leave our practice soon, but she's great. And she sounds like she'd be a good fit for you. Yeah. And then she has the same name as me. So I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. That must be a sign. Yeah. I was like, God brought her, and it makes sense. And so started working with her, and literally have worked with her, since 2020.
So cool to hear.
Right? And it was so special. So I want to ask you, do you have a lot of people that say hey, I tried this with other people before? How do they come about to you?
Yes, I hear that a lot, both from clients that find their way to me, and also, I'm just kind of always, this is the social work part of me that is never going to die, is I'm always helping other people find
other people too. Yeah.
Which is fine. I have good boundaries around it, but I have friends who are like, my coworker needs someone and she wants, a person of color, or she needs to take Cigna, or there are a lot of specifics people have. And so, and you don't know what you don't know. It's hard to find a therapist if you've truly never looked. And I kind of know the networks to look into. I know a lot of people.
Yes.
So I love to help people.
That's awesome.
There's enough work here and now. There's enough people that need help.
We got a lot of problems.
There's a lot of people that need help. And we're a very mental health heavy area.
Right. Why do you think that is?
I've actually talked about this before.
Okay. Yeah.
We have 4 graduate programs in Middle Tennessee that are different types of counseling, mental health.
Okay.
So there's just a lot. We're just cranking them out, basically. Lipscomb, Trevecca, MTSU, UT, Belmont all have programs in different licensures of counseling, and they're just cranking them out and, going into practice.
I would be interested to see, like, compared to other big cities, like how much of the majority have like therapists. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's like, 60% of the population uses a therapy, you know what I mean?
I do know that in Tennessee, we are the richest in Tennessee as far as resources. Yeah. I see a lot of clients virtually in both Memphis and like Knoxville, Chattanooga, just because there's not as many. There just aren't as many, and definitely in the more rural parts of the state. But even like Knoxville and Memphis, which are pretty large, our other large cities, there's just not as many options. Yeah. And even looking at the programs that we have here in Middle Tennessee, they are more diverse, and so they're creating different types of therapists, and so there's just a lot of options here. So. That's not like a definitive, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. No,
that's what I've seen over the last years. But so I help a lot of people find someone, and I get this question. It's really hard. It's a little bit like dating. You do have to have an open mind and give it a shot. And also, you just don't like everybody. That's okay.
True. It could, but also, the one person can't be your everything too.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's.
Yes. So a lot of times I try to help people, especially if it's like a friend or a friend of a friend. What do you want from this experience? Right. If you're dealing with life stuff, the loss of someone, we all have anxiety, if you're dealing with garden variety mental health stuff, there's a lot of people that can address that. Yeah. If you have a lot of mental illness in your family, if you're dealing with a more acute mental illness, if you're having manic episodes, psychosis, things like that, that's going to narrow who you look for. Right. If you want a woman, if you want someone who identifies a particular way, if you want a faith background, if you want to pay with your insurance, there's all these ways to kind of narrow down.
So it doesn't seem so overwhelming.
Yes. And then also understand, like, they're not going to be your friend necessarily. Right. You want to feel comfortable.
Right.
But
and
you don't need everything from them.
So someone had actually talked to me about this, and they were like, because I am very much so, people have taken it personally in the past, but like, especially with my business, like I have always been, like, I lead by example. Okay. So, and I know you don't know a ton about like my story and things like that, but my whole deal is like, I am always trying to better myself in any which way, right? Yeah. And when it comes to, movement, like I've loved movement even when I was like my strongest, and even when I was injured, I was like, I have to move in some way. If all I can do is walk, because that's what the doctor said, that's what I did. You know what I mean? If all I could do is the PT exercises, that's what I did. I moved my body because that made me feel fulfilled, that made me feel successful. So movement, I danced as a young age, from the age of 3, then got into weightlifting, all these different things. But it was one of those things where, when it comes down to like my like with clients like that, like I run my business in a certain way where I'm not going to be hanging out with you like drinking, partying, whatever. And a lot of trainers do that. Oh, okay. And people will come to me and start training with me because they've like said, like, my trainer used to like, eat this in front of me, but then tell me to eat this. Yeah. And it's very hard for me to hear that, because it's like, again, I have always led by example. You know what I mean? Sure. And so when people be like, oh, why don't you come over and hang out? It's like, no, like, again, you know what I mean? Like, I just started this past year, and really not the only reason, but like I just started this past year being like, okay, well, let's do some more like Dandy Fitness outings. So that way we could go do like fun activities. We're not going to the bars, but we're going to go to like the Nightlight 615. So like, if you choose to drink with that and watch a movie, then cool, right? Mm-hmm. But like, that doesn't mean I am, whatever. Or if you don't want to eat or do want to eat, like, gives them the options. Okay. Or even like, I think we're looking at maybe doing like a zombie hayride type thing, like, or it's like a paintball thing, just like something fun that's not surrounded by like eating and like, drinking, but it's not like a one-on-one. It's like we come in group meet things. They're
not becoming your bestie, like, but they have some opportunity to be social with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I felt like that was a safe space, just because even like food can be triggering. Like, there's so many things. Yeah. So I want people to feel flexible within those events. Sure. Yeah. And then I do events where I do like pop-ups, for charity things and different stuff and organizations. But like, my dance move fit, that's what I do. So it's like a body positive dance fitness format. And literally, like, we just have so much fun doing that. But some of them will come to those, and they're at every single one, and they help out and all that stuff. And that's fantastic, right? But it's just one of those things where it's like, I really try to have those lines and be as like, because again, I think that when it becomes that whole thing of like your best friend or whatever, we can be friendly and we can do those things, but again, I can't be your everything.
Right.
Right. Like your trainer, your best friend, you're this, you're that, whatever. Right. Like, and so I wanted to kind of hear your input on that. Like, that's like healthy, right?
I talk about boundaries a lot. I think I said that already. In my role, some of that is taken care of for me because my license I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which is it's by the Tennessee Board of Health. So I'm licensed. I have the education, and I'm licensed to the state. And our mandates have like specifics around dual relationships and conflicts of interest. And so I really can't be friends with my clients. And so, that's a breach of our code of ethics. And so that kind of protects me. I don't have to really say that. I still have some tricky things. I talk to someone every week for a year leading up to their wedding. They want me to come to their wedding. And like, I get it. And also I can't come to your wedding because then that breaches your confidentiality, even if you're cool with it, you know, because then I'm outing that I'm your therapist. Right. So some of that's taken care of for me, but a lot of the clients I work with. And one other thing I offer in addition to individual therapy, not that you asked, but it's relevant, is I do workshops for like nonprofits. Right. So educating big groups of helpers at a time. And boundaries is like one of the number one requests because people in helping professions get burned out. You know, think of a teacher. They have the parent's contact number. They're texting them at 8 p.m. I don't have such and such. Or nurses. They get to know those families.
Those are a lot of my clients.
Nurses, I have my best friend is a NICU nurse, and those babies, their families are in the unit for so long that she becomes friends with them. And so it can be, when you have to make the boundary up on your own, it can be really sticky. And so what was the actual question? Do you remember?
I don't know. I was just saying that in terms of like, what'd you say?
Oh yeah, trying to not be everything with everyone. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to like a whole agency, you know, if you work for the rescue mission, you might see your clients somewhere else, but if you kind of think of yourself as the entity that you work for, or in your case, like your fitness business, then if you see a client at Target, you can say hello to them, but like you don't really owe them anything. Right. In that capacity, you're just Dani at Target. Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's so funny because I was actually talking to somebody about this earlier, but because we were talking about the movies or whatever, and because I love to go to the movies, and I will not, like, no joke, one time, and I loved this client. Like, I mean, we would run together. Like, it was great, whatever. But I was at the movies, and one time I saw a client and another client, actually, like they were together, and we hadn't planned it or anything like that. And I was just like, oh, hey. And they're like, come up here. But they were drinking. Yeah. And again, and this is even when I was drinking, you know what I'm saying? And like, now I don't. But it was just funny because even then I could have partaken, but I just don't do that at the movie theater, right? Yeah. But it was just one of those moments where I was like, I can't sit with you. Like, I remember like yelling at the top, like, I'm like, it's good. Like, enjoy the movie. Yeah. Have fun. And then afterwards they were so like, you know, sassy about it. Like, wow, you couldn't even come. I was like, sorry. Like, I just, you know what I mean? Because then it's just that whole one, that's that appearance, whatever. And people don't know that we didn't plan that, or that was like, whatever. And it was just, again, I was just starting out in my business. I don't need to be seen drinking, you know, at the theater. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's so much to think about. And it's hard. And people don't realize that. They don't. And those things pop up unexpectedly, you know. And Nashville is a small town, you know? Right. So, my actual therapist, she said she saw one day, she said, I'm not trying to be like whatever, but I saw someone walking on the road and your shirt, because I have like Dani Fitness shirts. She's like, I saw the winner Love Your Body shirt. Yeah. And I was like, that's so cool. But like, it was one of those moments where you're just like, yeah, like I didn't want to, you know, obviously wouldn't go up to her and be like, I'm your therapist, but it just made me think of you. And I was just like, oh, that's awesome. But like, it's a small town. Yeah. And I always, if a client is telling me like, oh, they're server at a restaurant, I'm always like, I want to know where they work. I want to be cognizant of like, it's like I'm never going to go to this restaurant if my client works there, but I'm just going to be mindful as I'm walking in. Exactly. And I always tell them on the front end, like, if you see me in town, I'm not going to address you. If you want to say hi to me, you're welcome to, but we can just ignore each other and that's fine. I'm never going to. But see, everyone's always looked at me like how I've said this and done this with my business as like I'm being ridiculous. Like I mean, because no other trainers mandated by exactly. You know, but I'm like, but it is like, this is my livelihood. And sometimes even when some clients will say like, again, it's like that whole friend thing, right? It's not to say that I don't have love for you and I care for you so deeply or whatever, but sometimes it is kind of like a, you know, I don't know, will call me friend more often, and I'm just like. You are a friendly trainer, not their trainer friends. Right, exactly. And so it would always be kind of cringe for me because I'm like,
Because this is such a, again, we're working towards goals. Like we could, whatever, but like we're not hanging out in your living room just like chatting.
Yeah.
Like,
and it would honestly, you wouldn't be as efficient if,
correct.
I'm more likely to cancel on you if you're just my bud. Or,
exactly. So there
if I'm
has
not
to be that
paying
level
you,
of respect.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And before I had my system, so any trainers that are up and coming, listen to this, like get a system that is automated and figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't like, you know what I mean? I'm sure mine's not perfect, but it does help so much.
Sure.
And it does like, I mean, it's just so much of a
that
relief.
does protect you from like the tendency to rearrange your life for someone else's benefit, which is, you're trying to make money, you're trying to book clients. So when someone's like, can I do 8 p.m. on a Friday? You're like, I mean, I want to.
Right.
So if you have an automated system that makes it easier, that just kind of cuts that off at the pass. Yeah.
Exactly. So which has been so beautiful. And but again, this has taken years to get to. So like let's like be clear about that. 7 years. So like get it running fully and everything like that. And so which has been great. But yeah, it is interesting. And also I will say that my therapist actually she said, do I have permission? Because I told her, I was like, if you would like to listen to one of my podcasts, I would love to have you listen. Yeah. And she was like, well, if I have your permission, would love to listen. And she was like, this was so cool to get to hear, because I was talking to a childhood best friend. He came on and whatever. I was like, yeah, listen to it. Sure. Like I even do that in terms of like dating and stuff. I would much rather if the guy would just go listen to some of the podcasts.
Yeah. And then tell me what you think. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're still interested, holler at me.
Like when I was on those apps, which was forever ago, and I don't want to go back on those at all, but it was one of those things where I literally, because you're saying the same thing every day. Yeah. So like this, like different people, you're like, here's what I do. Mm-hmm. My mission, my whole life's purpose is this business. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Like, and I'm like, you just listen to the podcast. Yeah. And literally not one of them listened to the podcast. And that's why I know they were not the one. Yeah. Because they wouldn't even take the time to listen to get to know me.
Yeah, not right for you.
Okay. Like, so but that, because that really means a lot when somebody, I mean, I'll tell you, one of my friends, and he's really, really nice, but he came to my birthday, but he literally said something, because he got me those pictures over there. Okay. Fun fact is I didn't have these yet. And so like when he showed up for my birthday, they just had got in. Okay. And he's like, I've been listening on the podcast and you've been saying about how the walls were like so bare and that you really wanted pictures. So I got you some.
That's so cool.
And, but you see, and those are great because they're like, again, like France, like Paris is like where I want to go. I'm part French. And so that's like my whole thing. So like listen to that detail. Wow. Like listen to that. I want to travel overseas. Like, and that probably took him, whoever, like probably picked it up at like Target or something. Yeah. But like
that's so intentional.
Right. Yeah. And that was so cool. But I was like, if that could just be a man that I want, to be in a romantic relationship with, to even take that level of care, like in that consideration, So anyway, so it's just funny what people pick up and they listen to this and the gems that they get and stuff. But anyway, but all that to say, tell me. So you have, so you met your husband, you slid into his DMs, okay? And when was that? Back in
2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you guys got married and here in Nashville. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. He actually lived in Raleigh at the time. So we were long distance for a minute. He came to visit. For our first date was like 5 days. Like he came.
Really?
He was like, I'll come to Nashville and meet you. He's very, very laid back guy. And I was like, okay. Then he's like, I booked a ticket. I'll be there Thursday to Monday. And I was like, well, that feels like a lot of pressure.
Right.
And he was like, don't worry about it. He was staying with a friend.
Oh, okay. Nice.
He really didn't ask me to arrange anything.
That's so nice.
He had a place to stay and he was like, yeah, we'll go out Thursday night. If you're not having a good time, you don't have to see me again. Don't like Friday to Monday is not your problem.
Right.
And we had a great time. But I was,
love it.
Yeah, he's very laid back, very chill.
Okay.
I'm very tightly wound. So
I was about to ask. So are you like type A and he's type like, or is it like?
Yeah, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram.
I'm an 8. Yeah.
I'm just very direct. I kind of know what I like, know what I want, know what fits right. And plus a career in social work, there's a lot of, I don't love conflict, but I'm just comfortable with it. And I'm just going to say what needs to be said in a nice and gentle way, but I'm not I'm not a peacemaker. Like I'm not going to avoid awkwardness just to take care of things. And he's definitely a peacemaker. Nothing really ruffles him. We have this joke, like, it's not a hill to die on, and they're all worth dying on for me. And but I found a rhythm, not without our own counseling and support,
Right. So I was going to ask you, so how long was it till after you got married? Was it
like 13 months?
Okay.
It was quick. And I was 34 and he was 31. And yeah, I'd just been dating for a long time and definitely wanted to get married, but was not willing to. I had a really fun life. Like I really enjoyed my life. I had a big group of girlfriends. I lived with my best friends from college, and our other best friend lived behind us. Like I just.
Oh, you were vibing. You had a whole thing.
I loved my life. Yeah. And wasn't really going to change that just to get married. But we were a really good fit, and I think we were the right.
But yeah, and so it gets kind of the weird in betweens and stuff like that. But we were talking about with your husband, everything like that, and you have your 2 kids. Yeah. Okay, boys and girls.
They're both boys.
Oh, both boys.
Yeah.
Okay, so
they're 2 and 3.
Okay.
It's very chill.
Wow.
I call it the toddler fight club.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
You're just like, let's do it again.
I guess.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that.
Okay, so were you? Was that like? So okay, so you said 34 was when you guys met, and then how much longer after you had kids?
I was 30. I think like 3 years. We got married in 2017. My first was born in 2020. So
okay, so you had like some time for just you 2. Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
So do you feel like because like with the 13 months of because I'm always interested in how quickly people get married, right? Yeah. Because sometimes people, like if you talk to a man, he's like, I knew from the moment, like I saw her or whatever, right? So was that just I don't know how was that?
I think it worked out.
Yeah.
And I also think you just can't know everything. You just can't know what you don't know about people, about marriage, about relationships. Right. So we've definitely you're going to have to learn and iron out some things on the front end or the back end. But either way, you're going to have to figure some things out. Right. So we did a lot of learning about each other after we were already committed and married. Okay. And so that was difficult, but I also just think it is what it is. Part of what kind of escalated our timeline was that, we were ready. Mm-hmm. We also we don't really need to be paying 2 rents. It wasn't all just, practical, logistical, but there were just a lot of factors moving into it. We also had some context because we have a lot of mutual friends. Mm-hmm. So, we kind of knew each other's background and childhood and families versus if I went on a date with someone from Tinder, I really don't know them from Adam. So I don't know. I gotta travel and meet their family. You have to.
Yeah. There's so much. It's a drawn out kind of process.
Yes, you have to really take the time to learn, and I think is wise to take the time to learn. Yeah. And in his case, we had a lot of that stuff already, even though he and I weren't really connected. We had a lot of mutual people who could kind of vouch for us to each other, if that makes sense. Yeah. And it just worked out that way. Yeah. But it did not work out in such a way that it's been smooth sailing. I'm a big advocate of marriage counseling.
Yeah, but I think that's for anybody though. I think, and also to everyone listening to this, you don't. It's such a I feel like old way of thinking, but I still think people still think this. So they're like, well, I don't need a therapist. Yeah. Or why? Yeah. And it's okay, but also why not? Because again, at the end of the day, there's just something so beautiful about having a person that just has really, like you said, with the whole not being your friend, they're not. It's a very platonic, it's a very safe space. Yeah. In that if they say something you don't like, it's not personal. Right. You know what I mean? You don't have to overthink it. I don't go past my sessions with my therapist and be like, oh, maybe I should have said it in this way, or maybe I should there's none of that. Say what you gotta say. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not about her. Yeah.
Right. And it's so nice. And I think that we all need that. And that's why I try to create for in the LYB, a safe space for my clients, to have for movement. Right. Yeah. So you need that for your therapy, for your mental, you need that for your spiritual, I believe, with your church, there's so many different. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I do talk to a lot of people about, do I even need therapy? And therapy, I think, has become the most popular word, but it's still pretty a loaded word. It sounds, wow, that sounds heavy. Right. And some people are I don't know if I need therapy, but maybe counseling. And I'm well, they're the same.
The same thing. Yeah.
They're the same thing. But if you find that your friends keep saying, I don't know what to tell you, then you need to talk to someone else.
Exactly.
If your mom has no more guidance for whatever you're going through. And I think having the objective person, kind of when it comes to a trainer, if my husband is just telling me what to do to get in shape, I'm going to be forget it. Give me some ice cream. Right. But if I'm paying someone who knows what they're talking about, took the time that is educated on this topic, and my gains are your business, then I'm just going to take you more seriously. And it's the same with, I know that some of my clients say actually, you are telling me the exact same thing that my mom's been telling me or my roommate. but it just hits different.
Thank you. No, literally, someone the other day was leaving the gym. They're like, yeah, they said, they told me this like very expensive like clinic. So they told me to eat 3 times a day and like to get my protein in. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Year ago.
Yeah.
But like, that's, you know what I mean? Or like, oh, like, did you know, like they'll come to me, did you know you're supposed to have like half your body weight in ounces in water? And I'm like, sis, wait. Let's go back to the first session. Let's go back to if you go back to your forms, it says it right there.
Yeah,
but because it's because it's a doctor, it was taken more seriously.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and again, I'm glad it got through. Yeah. Right? Like, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's like, so I get how like it does hit different when it comes from somebody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that.
Yeah. And I think too, when it comes to like therapy, one thing I kind of I frequently remind my clients of is that my interest is in your wellness.
Yes.
So like if a client's in a relationship, I'm like, I don't dislike whoever your partner is or what that, but they are not my interest.
Right.
Your wellness is my interest. And kind of like in your case, their goal, their fitness is the thing that you're invested in. And that is not necessarily true when you're talking to your mom or to your partner or to your roommate, because they have your mom is happy when you're happy, or your husband is happy when you're happy. And so I'm able to, my feelings don't matter in that conversation. Correct. I'm only saying like, here's what you want. Here's what we've identified as wellness for you. And so these steps will get you there. Yeah. And my feelings aren't hurt if you say, I don't want to do that.
Oh yeah.
Like
100%.
Your friend would
I'm like, you can either take the advice, take it or leave it. Like that's fine. Yeah. But that's a good point too. And the thing is like, like I've told them, I've really started advocating more and more for that, just because like stuff was getting kind of heavy. And I've had some of the people like come on the podcast and talk about their journeys. Yeah. And I'm like, there's certain things like, again, I can only help you move your body, and do what I can do and be that support and everything, and like be that energy. Sure. And that's really what I have found with my business, is that like I've always tried to like kind of narrow it down of like, why do people train with me for so long, or like why do they love like being a part of the mission and everything like that. Obviously, it's a great mission. We all should strive to love ourselves more every day, love our bodies, things like that, because that's why I feel like the world is broken and everyone's insecure. So anyway, I feel like we can change the narrative and change the world through this. But besides that, it's the energy. It's like the positivity, because outside of those walls, everything else maybe in their life is so negative. Yeah. That they just need some like laughs. We just need to have some fun, like while we move our body, sweat, feel good. It's the whole thing, right? Yeah. And so that is what I feel like I can uniquely bring to the table, because that's just how I have always been, and that's like how I help serve others,
That's awesome.
And thank you. So it's like, again, it's it has been super fulfilling and super beautiful, and it's just like knowing kind of like what that's like my specialty, Yeah. And so would you say that with yours, like with dealing with the, you said anxiety and like panic attacks and stuff like that, like how did it kind of cultivate to get to that point? Was it like, because you know what I mean? Because at first, I'm sure you were just kind of like, I'm
Bring
here.
Your problems,
right?
Figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did sort of evolve. Your niche kind of evolves. That the social work, as a profession, is generalist, meaning we are trained and educated to meet the needs of all pockets of society. Okay. So that's just kind of the mission of social work. So you learn the same principles that you can apply in the unhoused population, with children, with all these different diverse areas. Yeah. So I had to learn how to switch my niche, versus like if you went to a counseling program for marriage and family therapy, you're going to learn how to do marriage and family therapy. Right. And so I used to just, when I first started my practice, to answer, I think you asked this a little while ago and I never answered. I started my practice because my husband and I were planning to move to Greece and work with refugees. And I at the time worked for Metro Schools as a school social worker and loved my work, but it was very heavy. Yeah. And was like, I need a minute. I can't go from this to like Syrian refugees with just like a week in between. Right. So I decided to kind of take a beat. I was going to just like work at a coffee shop or something. And I'm licensed to see clients as my own. So I just kind of tested. Yeah. Like, let's just create a website and see if anybody calls me, and I'll kind of. Cool. Yeah. And then it evolved, and I just really loved it. And it's evolved and grown. But I initially was like, come to me, all who are weary.
Yes. Yeah, I get that. Yep.
And then I've slowly don't do couples anymore. I don't work with couples.
Yep.
I don't see kids anymore. So now it's 18 and above.
Okay.
And it just kind of turned out that most people anxiety was the most common issue that people were presenting with. And sometimes it was not, I don't know where it comes from. I'm just so anxious. And sometimes it was like, I experienced this capital T trauma.
Yeah.
And I've never been the same.
Right.
So, that's just, I really loved the unpacking of where your anxiety comes from. And I think that's why that's become my niche is I love every time a new client comes, they dump this like word vomit. Here's my life story. Here's what's going on. Here's what happened yesterday. Here's this, and they're always apologizing all over themselves.
Yeah.
If any of my clients are listening, they're like, she's talking about me, but I'm talking about all of you.
Yeah.
You apologize. They apologize over and over. Like, this is so disorganized. I'm so sorry. It's out of order. And I'm like, it's fine. Just dump it out. I got it. And over time, I know what I'm listening for, and I know I know how to clinically improve symptoms of anxiety. So I'm listening for those cues and then kind of pulling out parts of their story and helping them identify, what actually is the root of some of these things. And over time, their story becomes more organized. They're not telling me about panic attacks as much as just kind of telling me about their week. And like, here's something that used to be triggering and it wasn't even triggering. And this happened. And I'm like, I think you're ready to leave the nest. And that part I realized, particularly with anxiety, for me it's that I started to see that process over and over. Someone who was like, life is unmanageable to them. Yeah. And then they're able to kind of organize it in a way that it's pretty manageable. And then they leave. And I never really see anyone when they're happy, which is a bummer. But but that's it's that process that I realize I really love anxiety and particularly panic, because panic attacks are debilitating. And people you can't live that way for very long. Right. And I just, I love helping people figure out that it's not, you don't have to drown under a panic attack. So that's kind of how that niche developed. And then I just love my helpers. So if you have a helping job, then come find me.
For sure. So tell me, come to you for, mental and then come to me for physical. So
exactly.
I love it.
I was going to say, we should like work together a little more. Like I've got my niche and a lot of body image comes up a lot. And that's not my thing. Or nutrition, exercise. Right. I know it's important. I know it works for me, but like, I am not going to tell you what diet to be on. Right. I'm not going to advise against we need to find you a nutritionist, or we need to find you a trainer.
No, I love that. So, and that's the thing too, is because like they've asked me about my therapist. I was like, no.
I'll leave some cards for you.
Exactly.
I've got someone. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because like I love to, and I outsource everything for them. Because like I have the chiropractor that we use. We have a whole list of things. Yeah. So it would be nice to do that, because like I said, they know what kind of recovery products to get. They know my massage therapist. They know all those things. So because I only work with the best.
Keep your therapist for yourself.
Yeah. Like, I mean, just because like, again, but she's also like, she's so funny, but like, she's just funny. Like she has an interesting life, but it's kind of how you said, like, you don't know really the full picture of her life, but like, you know, the bits and pieces and stuff. But yeah, so she's just interesting. But I would love to refer people out. So definitely.
I even have some hairdressers that like keep my cards on hand, because people tell their
hairdresser everything. Yes.
And I know one in particular who's like, wow, that sounds like a lot. Schedule at the front desk, and here's a card of a friend.
Exactly. But and again, because it's just like, like I think a lot of times I took that weight on of like because I was like, okay, not only am I trying to change the world and how everyone sees bodies and how everyone loves their body, but I was like, but I want to be everything for everyone, right? Sure, and that was when I first was coming up. And then slowly it was like, man, like I'm just like now being like kind of taken like bits and pieces down, because you can't do that. And so when you learn that, and hopefully most people that are listening are like, they can stop before they get burnt out. They can stop before health stuff happens or whatever comes about, and can be like, let's redirect and do what they have to do to where it is like, I want everyone to have as many resources as possible and feel as successful as possible, not just, with me. But yeah, so I love that. I was going to ask you something when you were talking and now I forgot, but I guess like, when it comes to like with your like now with like having your kids and everything like that. So you train or you see people in person. Like you okay.
I offer virtual also, but
okay.
Yeah.
So where's that
My
like
office is in Midtown, right by Centennial Park.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so I personally prefer in person.
Yeah, okay.
But I have some people who maybe travel around the state for work, or
it's just not feasible.
I started my practice before COVID. And so
Yes.
I moved to virtual for a period of time.
Yep, same.
And so some people who maybe live in like Cool Springs have just been like, I ain't hauling it back
I don't
want to
drive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will accommodate virtual.
Okay.
Fine.
Gotcha.
And I am limited by state. That's
yeah.
like since I'm licensed by the Board of Health.
All right.
So I can really only offer therapy, but across the state of Tennessee.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So what part of like Nashville do you live in?
I live north of downtown. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's not a very far commute for me.
Yeah.
But I also because I have small kids, going to an office, and like my work day
You
is
have that
completely
space. Yep.
like a work day. And
Yes.
so I'm not having to try to juggle. I'm not a great multitasker, and I know that about myself. So, yeah.
So how old were you when you had your kids, you said?
37 and 39.
Okay. So for anybody listening, because I know I have a lot of like my girls and stuff, and like were you at any point like stressed out? Were you like about your age with having kids, or were you just like, it's going to happen when it happens?
I definitely had doubts. I mean, we are told about, from early on, we have the eggs we have and they disappear. And so I definitely had worries and concerns around it, but also that's just how my life worked out. Like I got married at 34. There wasn't really anything I could do before that. I mean, I wasn't interested in trying to become a single parent prior to that. I did have some of those thoughts, like, is there a point where I'm just going to get a child on my own? Adopt or something? But we met when we did. So that's just kind of how it worked out. And then there is some sadness around, my best friend's kids are in high school. They had kids so much younger than me.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I also have a lot of friends who got married closer to my age, and I don't tell all my clients about my life, like we were saying, just because that's their hour that they're paying for,
Right, yeah.
But sometimes when it's appropriate, I see a lot of single women.
Yeah.
This is a hard city to be single in.
Yeah.
It's a hard city to date in.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I think it's much more so for women than for men.
For sure.
And so, it's appropriate. I'll be like, I was almost 35 when I got married. And I'm not saying like that's going to happen for you, but I really do. I get it. I get that feeling of like, what is happening here? This is not how I thought things would go.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it's, again, just letting go of those timelines and expectations with things, right? But it's also what we talked about from the very beginning. I don't even know if we were on air yet, but like about, you had said that you would do something like once a week, right? Or would you say? Like it was like with dating? Like you had just like to have a funny story.
When I was on the apps, I would kind of pick one outrageous date per week. Not necessarily scheduled per week, but I'd like to mix it up with someone who we probably weren't a match, but this will be a good story. So I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because I was telling you that I had started out when I was coming out of my grief process of like, okay, do something like one thing a month that like you don't really want to do. You're like kind of resistant to it, but like, because I used to do all the things. And then when all that kind of happened, it kind of like pushed me down a little bit. And so it was one of those things where like, okay, let's do that. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm starting to do more things throughout the month. So how about like once a week? And then like, and then it was like, the other day I did like 4 things in 1 week that were totally, out of whatever. So it was, I find that there's such value in that because here's the thing, right? Like, how are we going to find those people? Because we can sit here and complain all day long that nobody's coming around and nobody's reaching out and whatever. Yeah. But also like, where do you go?
Yeah.
Like, what things are you doing? Yeah. Are you being present when you're doing them? Like, I was at the gym the other day and this guy smiled at me. And what did I do? I kind of smirked and looked down because I was so getting ready for the hack squat. I was so not ready. Like, I was just like, I hate this machine. Yeah. I don't want to do this. And of course, he's like closer than what you and I are. And I look up and he's like smiling. And I was like,
awkward.
Yeah, the most awkward. And then I was just like, well,
that moment's passed.
Yeah, I literally ruined
Can we redo this?
And I was just like, whatever, it's fine. And then I finished my workout. But anyway, like even just like putting myself out there to do that, like, so it's just, you have to do that too. Yeah. So you can't blame it all on the men. You know what I mean? And like the guys can't blame it all on the women. Like there's got to be something, and putting forth that effort, to like better yourself.
Yeah, I talk about that with a lot of people. There's not a right way to do it. There are great love stories that come off the apps.
Right.
And there are really skeezy guys in some churches. So
Yes.
there's not like a right way, you
Right.
know?
That's what I was gonna ask you, because again, and you don't have to mention or go too much into it, but like, do you like when people are looking to work with you and stuff, like, do you tell them that you're faith like based, like, do you?
I don't usually, unless, so also that's another part of our code of ethics for social work, is that the practitioner's faith is irrelevant to the practice. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So I certainly don't hide my faith background if someone is curious about it, but it is not, I'm not a Christian counselor per se. So some of my clients figure that out based on some of the things we share about our lives. Again, I really don't share that much because I'm there to listen to their story. For sure. And it's funny how I know some people who are like, your clients don't ask you. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's rude, but they don't want to know. They're there to talk about themselves.
Yeah, but you don't take it personally.
No.
Like, I have some clients that like don't know, or like they know because of social media and stuff, or kind of, but like, but they're just like, they're in their deal.
Yeah, they're
like,
doing their thing, and I'm there to support them, and that's, everybody's happy with that.
And like sometimes they'll be like, so like, how are things with you? And I'm like, they're good.
Yeah.
And then we move on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So similar to faith, like my opinion, my experience is not really a part of what I'm bringing to them necessarily, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So
yeah,
it just kind of depends on what they need.
Did you feel like with COVID and stuff, like because I never had a therapist on here, so I want to ask you, like, did you feel like there was a shift like in the world?
Oh, for
like,
sure.
Like, okay, was it like that heavy to you, and like, how was that?
Yeah, I was also pregnant. My pregnancy kind of aligned. I found out I was pregnant the day that the mayor shut down Nashville, like the day that the stay-at-home order went in. And so I had just kind of a weird experience because it was like, personally, I was in a whole different place than the rest of the world, and also kind of relieved to be like, well, I guess I'll just be on my couch for the next few months and nobody's gonna ask me to go anywhere.
Right.
But the job I had right before starting my practice was with MMPS, with public schools, and the schools were very heavily impacted. And so that's kind of how my private practice took off, is so many teacher friends of mine were burned out, like could not function because of the demands of going to online school and taking care of their own families. And so my kind of first shift in my practice was taking care of teachers, and individually with counseling, but also I worked with an educational consultant to kind of help administrators know how to care for their teachers. Yeah. And so I think, aside from what was happening in the world, I felt the impact of what COVID was doing to educators the most acutely, I think, because that's who I was talking to. And that's the world I had been in for about 8 years, the 8 years prior to that. And just like friends who were now trying to do their own job, and their kids were at home. And like, I just kind of really felt that impact the most. Right. In addition to all the other things that went sideways during that time. Yeah.
No, I just, I always talk about that. I'm like, do y'all feel like there was just such a shift? Yeah. Like, because again, when that happened for me, not only am I going through like this whole thing or whatever with my, the boyfriend who passed away, like all of that stuff, I had just became, what was it? Like, I had just become like an influencer for a building in Midtown. So I was getting ready to move into there, and then like COVID hit. Like there were so many things that happened, like very traumatic and whatever with him. And like, so all these things that really, like, I was just living in like I was so used to like living in this, like, I'm continually working up, whatever. So, but now it was like, I'm just like here, like, I'm just like flatlined. Yeah. And like, I didn't fall to the ground yet, but like, I also wasn't like raising up. And that kind of really took an impact, you know? Yeah. And so I always go back to it and wonder, like when I talk to people about like when they say like COVID and stuff, you know, I'm like, did I feel it deeply because of the situation I was in? Sure. Or was everyone feeling, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like everyone really felt it, like, in such a immense way. Yeah. I mean, it changed a lot of stuff, and how people interact and how they express their emotions, you know, how they move their body. I mean, there's so much that has happened.
What you're speaking to, I feel like a lot of people who experienced grief during that time, or were just in the beginning stages of grief during that time, were very much impacted by loss of community, loss of inability to get back to normal life. You know, even something like little self-care trip to Target looked different because we couldn't do that, and different people's boundaries and limitations around meeting in public or meeting in person. Yeah. And so people who were grieving during that time really, really suffered in addition, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of mental health issues that thrive with community and accountability and schedule. You know, it's hard to, a lot of what we do to help someone move through depression is get a routine, be outside, find community, build a support network. And you couldn't do any of that. And so, or you had to be really, really creative. And if you're pretty depressed, you're low on creative juices.
Thank you. And that's literally, so like that was what was I think the hardest part of everything. Not even just necessarily the loss, but the loss of like my creativity, like myself. Cause you know, I'm now in this building, I'm an influencer, whatever, like it should be popping. Like, let's, you know, and I'm just like, what do we do? Yeah. Like, you know, and then it was like, again, they were awesome and amazing. They just loved me being there. Yeah. So like, it was not a pressure thing. I didn't have to do certain things or whatever. So, you know, occasionally they'd be like, hey, let's do a photo shoot. And I'm like, okay, you know, or they're like, hey, let's do this. I'm like, okay. And like, you know, and then I continued to work and train clients because they were right down the road from there. So that was great. And but it was one of those things where it wasn't until about 6 months later that, after the loss and stuff, that like, I was like, man, I'm just having such a sad day. And I've talked about this before because it was such a pivotal moment. But like, I was having such a sad day that I was like, okay, let's think of one moment and one memory where you felt amazing. What was that? And for me, that was flipping the tire because that was something, it was like a 500-pound tire, it was the strongman competition. But I had clients who weren't clients anymore, who flew in for that competition. Wow. And I had other things that I competed in that day, but that was the last final thing to determine if I won or not. And it was one of those moments where like, I remember just being happy with my parents. It was the only competition they ever saw, strongman competition that they came to. So it was the best one. But you know, and that day, and then plus like, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to think about that. But today I'm not going to be sad. I was like, the sun's out, you know, my pain in my leg was kind of like, I was having numbness, like, from an injury. And, so I was regaining strength back and all this stuff was happening. And I was like, let's go get your hair done. Let's get a spray tan. Let's have a good day. Right. Yeah. And I posted that video on TikTok, didn't think anything of it. Literally a few hours later, phone's blowing up. You know, 100,000 followers. Like all the crazy stuff happened, right? And so it popped off. Like E! News put it everywhere. Like it was on some news networks. That's like amazing. It was super cool, right? Yeah. But it was one of those moments where I was like, I have to take my life back. I'm tired of being sad. Like I'm tired of, you know, whatever. And guys, this is me still like getting movement in. You know, I still had a job. I'm training clients, whatever. I have a therapist now. I have a grief group I'm going to. Like I had all these things, but sometimes like it's like you're still sad. Like I have people who I work with now that they're now starting to get into this of like of life and hitting them kind of in the face and how they are just depressed or whatever. And it's like it doesn't matter what's going on or the support or whatever. Like you have to choose to like find something. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, and so that was something that I really do remember of like, that was the start of like, okay. And God knew that like, him even give me the idea of like that beautiful day, you know what I mean? To even like do all that.
Cool part of your story.
Yeah. It was super special. But yeah, like when it comes to all of that, I hope that anyone listening who is battling with stuff understands that one, I think a lot of people are just like, oh, depression is just like normal. Or like anxiety is just normal, right? Like, yeah, like, it's like, but now it's more of like it's not trendy. I don't want to say like that, but it's more like, well, what problems do you have? Yeah. And like, I was always that person that was trying to be like, nah, I ain't got no problems. Yeah. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, or like that I don't want to focus on them. Sure. More so. Right. Sure. And so now it's like, you know, people are like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, you get a therapist or you start talking to somebody that you trust, you know, like slow steps or whatever it might be. So, you know, is there any advice that you would maybe give to, I don't know, to somebody listening that just feels just depressed or stuck or whatever? How would they, like, what should they do?
What do they do next?
Yeah.
I do think that therapy can help anyone. Yeah. And it's not necessarily for everyone. Not everyone has to go to therapy. Yeah. I think most people would benefit, at least for a period of time, just getting some clinical insight into like how our...
Like, it doesn't have to be forever, you guys.
No, it's really kind of a norm. When I hear people say like they've seen their therapist for 15 years, I'm like, they might be taking advantage of you.
Right. Yes.
No, people kind of come and go. You know, they feel okay, then something happens, then they come back for a couple of sessions. That's pretty normal. But you should not be seeing people weekly for like 10, 20 years unless you have a very acute, persistent mental illness. That's just some side information.
Yeah.
So I just say start with Google. Look around, Google your symptoms, Google what you want. One great resource for anyone is Psychology Today, which is just a network. It's a network is not the right word.
Community
it's like a phone book. What's the word I'm looking for? It's
like
what's that? Kind of therapists. Okay. It's a place to find all the therapists. And it is we have to be vetted. Our license is like they have to see that we have a license. So people are not just willy-nilly on Psychology Today.
Love that.
And it has a number of search filters. So it's just a very reputable, easy first step. If you need Cigna, if you want a person of color, if you want a man, if you want someone who's LGBT friendly, all those filters are available to you and a bunch more. And so you can kind of see, and some people are like, does that even work? And I'm like, yes, it works. I pay to be on there.
Yeah.
I get a lot of referrals from that. You can trust
that.
Yes.
System.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're a good fit for you, but they're at least a legitimate therapist.
I love that.
They at least have their license number on there. They're licensed to be offering therapy. Okay. So that would be one good first step. Also, a lot of people, are just have websites. Yeah. So I always want to encourage people who are looking for a therapist, a few things to ask. Some people are like, I don't even know how to reach out to them.
Yes.
Shoot an email, or usually on their website, it tells you how they want to be contacted. On my website, it says you can call me or email me. You can also text me. My number's right here. If you are in the throes of anxiety, just shoot me a text. It's fine. And because calling is hard for a lot of people.
Yes.
And also calling back is hard for me. So a text is helpful.
Yeah.
Or an email and just, I'm looking for therapy.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Most therapists offer like a phone call or, just so you can kind of hear their voice and see if you feel like you would vibe with them. Yeah. And some people don't even want to do that. They just want to schedule, and that's fine too. I think there's a lot of confusion about what is normal or what's the right way to do it. And however you want to get started is fine. Yeah. That's kind of the point.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Google around, see who you can afford, ask on the front end if they take your insurance, or a lot of us are out of pocket because that's an insurance problem.
Yeah, for sure.
But find out if you can afford them. Yeah. And and then just go from there.
Yeah.
that would be my advice.
No, I love that. And I think it's also too similar of like when people are like, oh, I can't afford you, like with like me, right?
Sure.
And it's like, well, I have multiple custom programs, and I also do challenges like we were talking about before this, where it's like I've had some challenges that are $30 to join, and I have some challenges that are $200 to join.
Sure.
So again, there's options
to get help. Sure.
Exactly. This podcast, you can listen to this for free.
Yeah.
Hopefully you subscribe to the YouTube channel, guys. Please continue to do that. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like that's a resource. And then like my Fight Energy Booster that I was talking about, like that helps people stay mentally focused. It kind of calms them. They feel good. You know, when they drink it, they're getting their vitamins in. It's one less task, to do in the day. So there's like, I try to have all these different outlets of things. Like my book that I just came out with, I got you one in the goodie bag.
Oh, cool.
But it's called How to Love Your Body Throughout. It has actually some exercises in there. So I'd love for you to do it.
Okay.
And then let me know what how you like it. But like, that's another thing too. I mean, it's $10 on Amazon,
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's resources.
Sure.
There's ways. So maybe if you like just saying a blanket statement of you can't afford it, to me is not ignorant, but it's like, okay, well then you're not ready for it yet.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. That's an investment that doesn't feel worth it to you at this time.
Right.
And that's your call.
Exactly. So I think like kind of like looking at it of guys, there's so many different avenues, And when I first started, I did grief group that was a free thing. It was like Zooms, and literally it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that was on top of seeing my regular therapist.
Sure. Yeah.
Because she was so expensive. I was like, hey, I can see you like every other week, but I need some support in between.
Yeah.
I did the group calls.
And that's another good point. There are a lot of resources that are low cost investment or free. And you can kind of, again, Google is your friend, right?
Yeah.
So if you are, if you're recently divorced and you want some support around that, but you're not quite ready for individual therapy, there are a lot of churches that offer divorce groups.
Right.
Whether you're a part of their church or not. Or grief also. A lot of agencies offer free or very low cost grief groups.
Yeah.
That are kind of lower on the investment side and don't require, money up front or, you know what I mean? And also we talked about this earlier with like good fit of therapists. You don't have to commit to them. I talked to a lot of people about this too. They're like, I don't really like her. What do I need to say? And I'm like, you don't really owe her anything.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You don't owe me anything.
Right.
It's if you feel better about saying,
yeah,
I'm not going to schedule at this time, that's fine. But also I get ghosted. I've been ghosted plenty.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just it's their journey, and
Right.
that's okay. And your therapist is hopefully mature enough
Right.
to handle that.
Yeah.
You don't really owe them that. And that's like the biggest question that comes up from like friends. They're
Yeah.
like, how do I break up with my
Break up with
therapist?
them,
I'm
yeah.
like, you don't have to really, you can.
Right. Yeah, you can explain or whatever.
But it's okay
Yeah.
to just say like, I'm gonna, even with my own therapist, I kind of come and go with her. And so sometimes I'm like, I'm okay right now. I'll just reach out when I need you. Like, that's fine.
Exactly. And that's no. So, and again, for those listening, yes, she just said she has a therapist.
Of course.
So again, this all goes to the whole thing of when people are like, oh, I could just like work out on my own, or it's more so they get upset that they feel like they can't, like that they have such struggles, right? And I'm like, you got to understand that like, this is a routine and regimen that you're building that for all these years prior, you never had for 30, 40 years of your life or whatever. Yeah. And now you think that you've done it for 3 months, that like you can do it on your own, which again, some people are different. You know what I'm saying? And some people it is like very like whatever, but it is one of those things where it's like, you have to give it time to understand like how it's going to work and whatever, and not put so much pressure on yourself that it's like, well, I don't understand. And some people like, I have clients today who I worked with for years that are like, I will not work out unless it's with you.
If you're not telling me what to do.
Exactly. They're like, absolutely not. But that's a choice. But again, that's fine. That's her choice. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I know that,
Yeah.
you know, and some people are like, no, my goal is I want to learn. I want to get, to where I can do it on my own. And that's awesome too. And there's programs for that. Yeah. But like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, I just always find that to be so interesting. Yeah. Like
it is, everyone is different, but yeah, we all need that support and accountability or
and there's nothing weak about that.
Absolutely.
And so I know that a lot of women, and you probably deal with this, like I deal with a lot of like like yes, nurses and teachers and stuff, but like in like corporate offices and like very like higher up and like whatever like that, or entrepreneurs. So they're like, I can do everything on my own, and so they have that mindset.
Sure.
But it's like, but wouldn't it be nice to have one less thing that you have to worry about?
Right.
Or one less thing, or one more outlet, like with you. So again, you guys, like, it's not weak saying that you have a therapist. It's not weak saying you have a trainer. I've gotten some people who say that too. That they feel embarrassed because people really
ridicule. They just want to
ridicule.
look like this.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Or they like don't want to share their journey. And I'm like, take your photos.
Yeah.
You're going to want them.
Yeah.
Share that you're moving, because that's an example for somebody else. And I know that even me talking about having a therapist has helped people to be able to go get a therapist.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, you're so strong, and like, you have one. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that's how helps me be so strong.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely, that is part of the boundary part for the people who are in the helping profession is that I have somewhere to put my own stuff.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to hold my client stuff and my own, and my hands are getting full. Like, I'm offloading my stuff with my therapist, with Julie. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I'm ready to take on yours for your hour, and then you leave. Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah. And all this too, guys, when you're listening to this, and all this when we're saying, we do love our clients. Like, this is not us bashing you. This isn't like, don't take it personal or whatever. Like, this is just a blanket statement of the things that we deal with.
Yeah, this is
being
the curtain.
like entrepreneurs, and like running a business, and being a female, and doing all of that. And so I did want to ask you a little bit more about like you, Sarah. Like, so you said you were only child, or you have siblings?
I have siblings.
You siblings? Yeah. Okay. So big family, small family?
I have 2 younger brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So oldest. Yes. And then, so, growing up, you moved a lot and everything like that. Was that hard to have like friendships? Was it kind of like you were just more with your family a lot, or is it?
My family is all, we like to say, personality forward. So we're all kind of outgoing. I did not love moving as a child, but now I see how that really contributed to my personality and adaptability. And, we kind of all developed pretty deep roots everywhere we went, even though it was some places we were in some places for not a very long time. Yeah. But we did, I do think that our sibling bond looked a little different because we did have only each other in that experience of moving around. So we did have a pretty close relationship growing up, and still do. But I think that also contributes to I like new things. I like challenges. And I think that was kind of cultivated by, okay, now we live in Georgia. Let's figure out what the vibe is at this high school. And
I love that. Yeah.
And go with it. And
adaptable.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So, and then with having 2 boys of your own, did you want more kids, or were you like?
I don't know. Yeah, we're just kind of rolling with it.
You're just rolling with it. Yeah. Okay. So you're open to it. So some more, and when you had them back to back, were you like, what was that like? Were you kind of?
It was a little scary.
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate having them that close together, but it's been okay. Yeah, it's wild. It was definitely hard at the beginning to have 2 under 2.
Yeah.
But they're really buds. I mean, they fight a lot, but they're also like buds, and they really don't know life without each other. So there's a lot of sweetness to seeing how their relationship is growing. And it kind of helped, like we just kind of got everything out of, I never really got out of the fog of having a baby before the next one came around.
Back. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a really,
like we're just in it.
Yeah. It's just been a really wild time.
I tell people when they ask me, like, do you want to have kids? I'm like, yeah, I would love to be blessed, to have a child and everything. But I always imagine one. But then I'm also like, you know what? Like, knowing my luck, because my thing is I wouldn't want to have multiples. Like, I feel like I would rather, let's just put twins. Let's just do 2 at a time. Okay. Like, for bang for your buck. You know what I mean?
Like,
just because, like, if you're going to go through all that, whoo, like, I have the utmost respect for moms and just, like, and even the moms I train and stuff like that. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I got a new mama of 4 the other day, and I was like, sis, like, you're a beast. Like, but for me, I'm like, I would, oh my goodness, like, hopefully I would probably just have the one, you know what I mean? But then, like, in terms of if that did happen, I'm like, no, in my luck, it'd be somebody that's genetics is like triplets or like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then we're just like, okay, we have them all once.
Take what's given to you and you, like, adapt. You just figure it out. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So what is, and we're coming to the end of our segment and stuff, but I wanted to ask you, because I ask everybody, I think it's on the Love Your Body podcast, what is something that you love about your body?
That's a great question to ask a recently postpartum in my early 40s woman.
Yes.
I like my body composition. That might be a weird, like my general like shape, you know? So it's gotten larger, I've been smaller, but the general, like my height, my like ratio of like legs to torso, I kind of like, I think it's also just familiar. Like even when I have gained weight in pregnancy or after, or just in other times, there's a lot of familiarity in just like the shape of my body.
Yeah.
And so I find comfort in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I try to help my clients who are trying to improve their body image. Like, we don't have to love everything about ourselves.
No.
That's a little bit of a myth.
Yes,
like
100%.
But do you like some things? Can you even get comfortable with the parts that you don't really love and just let that be instead of trying to like force yourself?
You're gonna love the book. You're gonna like it's a short read. It's short read, but yeah, you can check that out and everything and the tools in there that I do. And so I'll do like speaking engagements and I've talked to kids and do stuff like that. So I'm always looking for more opportunities to do that. But it really does help. And it is one of those things that I'll go around doing like a Love Your Body initiative where I'll ask people all bodies, shapes, and sizes what they love about their body. And in the beginning, a lot of people were kind of like, yeah, this kind of silly to think about, or like, what's the point? But then they start thinking about it, and then it's like literally months later, people message me like, hey, like I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I have 2 more things to add.
Right? Exactly. And like, and you progress in it, and then maybe what you did love changes, and then you have something new that you love, and you keep putting that, you know, back, and so it's beautiful to see.
Yeah.
But no, I love that. So thank you for, and I did, because I have a lot of mamas that listen to the podcast, and I had a couple clients who've given birth recently, and things like that. So like, it helps them too.
It's hard to not recognize your body. That's a really hard part of like postpartum life is to be like, what is this?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, and to reminding yourself that, it's a natural thing, whatever, all this stuff. But it's, at the end of the day, you're like, stuff kind of got wrecked.
Yeah.
Like stuff's changed,
Some
right?
things have gone sideways.
Literally. But again, then you have such because your body, I tell my clients, like, your body went through such a traumatic. That's traumatic. Okay. You're going through that childbirth. So the fact that like, take this time to rebuild however you want, you know what I mean? And whatever it looks like and kind of enjoy it. It's kind of like not a surprise, but like kind of it's new territory.
And that sounds almost, Dani, exactly like what I tell my clients on their like anxiety or mental health journey is like, we're never going to be the carefree version of ourselves when we were 16 for some of us, because we're older. We've changed. Right. We are different people. You're never going to be who you were before you had kids or before you lost a parent or whatever the thing is. Like we're trying to discover who we are now.
Yeah. There's no point of looking back. There's no point of trying to get there.
Develop new tools to kind of meet ourselves wherever we are. And so I feel like that's very like mental and emotional and also physical. Like this is the body we got right now. So let's figure out how to live it. So
exactly. Let's embrace it throughout. So,
exactly.
I love that. Well, very cool. Sarah, is there anything else you want to leave them with or anything that you want to share?
Well, that's a good question. I just think if you have listened to this conversation and anything has resonated or rings a bell around anxiety or sadness or loss or grief, there is help in Middle Tennessee or anywhere. And I would encourage you to reach out and try to get some support if it will help you for sure. Yeah.
100%. I love that. Yeah. Okay. Well, until next time, you guys.